The thunderstorm had been building all afternoon, dark clouds rolling across the Manhattan skyline like an invading army. By 8 o'clock, the heavens finally opened, unleashing sheets of rain that turned the streets into rivers and sent pedestrians scrambling for cover under awnings and into doorways. Roman Hale stood at the window of Marcello's, watching the chaos unfold outside. The upscale Italian restaurant had been his father's favorite spot for business dinners, and Roman had continued the tradition even after taking over Hale Logistics 3 years ago. Tonight's meeting had gone well, a shipping contract with a European partner that would expand their operations significantly. Legitimate business, carefully documented, completely above board. That was important to Roman, more important than most people understood. He was 28 years old, with dark hair that he kept short and neat, sharp features that some called handsome and others called intimidating, and gray eyes that missed nothing. His suit was charcoal Armani, tailored perfectly to his athletic frame. Everything about him projected control, competence, and quiet authority. The rumors, of course, painted a different picture. In certain circles, people whispered that Hale Logistics was merely a front, that Roman had inherited more than just a shipping company from his father. They spoke of connections to organized crime, of dangerous men who answered to Roman with a word or a glance. Roman neither confirmed nor denied these rumors. Let people believe what they wanted. The truth was far more complicated than gossip could capture. "Mr. Hale, your car is ready," the maitre d' said, appearing at his elbow with an umbrella. "Thank you, Antonio. I'll walk tonight." The older man's eyebrows rose slightly. "In this weather, sir." "I need the air." Roman pulled on his coat and headed for the door. "Give my compliments to Chef Marcello." Outside, the rain hit him immediately, cold and relentless. He'd left his own umbrella in the car deliberately. There was something clarifying about walking through a storm, something that stripped away the noise and pretense of daily life and left only what was essential. The East Village was quiet tonight, the usual crowds of students and artists driven indoors by the weather. Roman walked east on St. Mark's Place, his shoes splashing through puddles, his mind already turning to tomorrow's meetings. There was a problem with one of their warehouse managers that needed addressing. Inventory discrepancies. Probably nothing serious, but Roman didn't tolerate sloppiness in his organization. He turned onto Avenue A, heading toward where his driver would be waiting on Houston Street. The rain was coming down harder now, lightning flickering in the distance, thunder rolling across the city like the footsteps of giants. That's when he heard it. A small sound, almost lost in the rain. A whimper, a catch of breath that might have been a sob. Roman stopped walking. The sound came again from a narrow alley between 2 brick buildings. Most people would have kept walking. It was late, it was raining, and New York City alleys at night were not places where smart people lingered. But Roman Hale was not most people. He stepped into the mouth of the alley, his eyes adjusting to the deeper darkness. At first, he saw only shadows and the gleam of rain on cobblestones. Then lightning flashed, and he saw her. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. She was drenched, her dark hair plastered to her face, her thin dress clinging to her shivering body. She was pressed against the brick wall like she was trying to disappear into it, her eyes wide and terrified. And she was pointing at something behind Roman. "Don't trust that man." Her voice cracked on the words, raw with fear and cold. She was shaking so violently that Roman could see it even in the dim light. "Please, he's not who he says he is." Roman turned slowly, every instinct on high alert. There at the far end of the alley stood a figure, a man in a dark coat, his face obscured by shadow and rain. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. Roman recognized him. Or rather, he recognized the type. There was a particular stillness that certain men developed, a predatory patience that came from practice. This man had it. Roman had encountered enough dangerous people in his life to know the signs. But there was something else too, something about the man's posture, his build that tugged at Roman's memory. He'd seen this man before, recently. Where? The restaurant. This man had been outside Marcello's when Roman arrived. He'd nodded pleasantly, stepped aside to let Roman pass, played the role of a friendly passerby perfectly. He hadn't been a passerby at all. The girl made another sound, a small cry of fear, and suddenly she was at Roman's side, her tiny hands clutching his suit jacket with surprising strength. She was soaked and freezing, trembling against him like a leaf in a hurricane. "Please," she whispered, "please don't let him take me." Roman looked down at her, then back at the man in the shadows. He made his decision in less than a second. "Go," he said to the man. His voice was quiet but carried clearly through the rain. "Now." The man didn't move for a long moment. Roman could feel the calculation happening, the assessment of odds and consequences. Then, slowly, the figure took a step backward, and another, and another. Lightning flashed again, and when Roman's vision cleared, the alley was empty. The girl was still clinging to him, her breath coming in harsh gasps. Roman looked down at her properly for the first time. She had a round face with delicate features, huge dark eyes that seemed too old for her age, and a scattering of freckles across her nose. She was dangerously cold, her lips tinged with blue, her whole body shaking uncontrollably. "You're safe now," Roman said, and was surprised to find that he meant it absolutely. "I'm going to pick you up. Is that all right?" She nodded, just barely. Roman lifted her carefully, holding her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing. How long had she been out here in the rain? Hours. Her arms went around his neck immediately, clinging tight. "What's your name?" he asked as he began walking toward Houston Street. "Harper," she whispered into his shoulder. "Harper, I'm Roman. We're going somewhere warm and safe now, okay?" She didn't answer, but her grip on him tightened. Roman pulled out his phone with his free hand and called his driver. "Nikolai, I need you at Avenue A and 3rd Street. Now, I have a child who needs medical attention." The black SUV appeared within 2 minutes. Nikolai was former military, efficient and discreet, and he asked no questions as Roman climbed into the back seat with the shivering girl in his arms. "NYU Langon," Roman said. "Emergency room, fast." The SUV pulled away from the curb and into the rainy night. Harper pressed her face against Roman's chest, her small body gradually warming against his. And in the back of Roman's mind, a question formed that would change everything. What was a 6-year-old girl doing alone in a New York City alley, running from a man who pretended to be a friendly stranger? If a terrified child warned you not to trust someone, would you listen? Sometimes the most important truths come from the smallest voices. Please click subscribe, do well to like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more thrilling stories, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. The emergency room at NYU Langon was a controlled chaos of fluorescent lights, beeping monitors, and the constant movement of medical staff. Roman had called ahead, and a team was waiting when they arrived. They took Harper immediately, wrapped her in heated blankets, started checking her vitals. She was hypothermic, dehydrated, and malnourished. She'd been on the streets for at least 24 hours, maybe longer. But she refused to let go of Roman's hand. Every time a nurse tried to separate them, Harper would start crying. Not dramatic wailing, but a quiet, desperate weeping that was somehow worse. So Roman stayed. He sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to her bed, his Armani suit still damp and rumpled, his hand enveloped by her tiny fingers. The police arrived within an hour. 2 detectives from the Special Victims Unit, a man and a woman, both with the tired eyes of people who had seen too much suffering. They introduced themselves as Detective Martinez and Detective Walsh. "Mr. Hale," Martinez said, his tone carefully neutral. "Thank you for bringing her in. Can you tell us exactly how you found her?" Roman told them. The alley, the rain, the man in the shadows. He described everything precisely, leaving nothing out. Walsh was taking notes. "And you didn't recognize the man?" "Not his face, but I believe I'd seen him earlier in the evening, outside a restaurant where I was having dinner. He seemed to be a random passerby at the time." "And the girl, Harper, She said, "Don't trust that man." Those were her exact words. She was terrified. Martinez leaned closer to the bed, where Harper was watching them with wide, wary eyes. Her color was better now, and she'd stopped shaking, but she still held Roman's hand like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the world. "Harper," Martinez said gently, "can you tell us your last name? Do you know where your mommy and daddy are?" Harper's eyes flickered to Roman, then back to the detective. She didn't speak. "It's okay," Martinez continued. "You're safe now. We just want to help you find your family." Still nothing. "Sweetie, I know you're scared, but I don't want to talk to you." The words were quiet but clear. Harper's gaze had gone flat and distant. Martinez exchanged a look with Walsh. "Why not, honey?" Harper pulled Roman's hand closer, holding it against her chest like a shield. "Because you're not safe. We're police officers. We're here to protect you." "That doesn't matter." Harper's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's pretending to be a cop. He's lying." The room went very still. Martinez straightened slowly. "Who's pretending to be a cop, Harper?" But Harper had gone silent again, pressing her face against Roman's hand, refusing to say another word. Walsh pulled Roman aside while Martinez continued trying to engage with the girl. "Mr. Hale, has she said anything else to you? Anything that might help us identify her or locate her family?" "Only her first name. She hasn't mentioned parents, an address, anything like that." "And you have no prior connection to this child? Never seen her before tonight?" Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. "No, if I had, I would have said so." Walsh held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. It's just unusual, Mr. Hale. A child appearing out of nowhere, attached to a stranger. Usually kids cling to whatever adult they know. She doesn't know you, but she won't let anyone else near her." "Maybe I'm just less threatening than the alternative." "Maybe." Walsh didn't sound convinced. "We'll need you to stay available for questions, and if she says anything else, I'll call immediately." The detectives left to make calls, and Roman returned to Harper's bedside. She looked up at him with those two old eyes. "They don't believe me," she said quietly. "What don't they believe?" "About the man, the one pretending to be a cop." Roman studied her carefully. "Is there a man pretending to be a police officer, Harper?" She nodded, the motion small and tight. "He was there when they took her." "When they took who?" But Harper's attention had suddenly shifted. She was staring past Roman, toward the glass window of her room that looked out onto the hallway. Her face went white. "Harper, what is it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she dove under Roman's coat, burrowing against him like a frightened animal seeking shelter. He could feel her heart racing against his chest. Roman turned to look at the hallway. A man was walking past the room, middle-aged, unremarkable, wearing the uniform of hospital security. He didn't look in their direction, didn't pause or hesitate, just walked by like any other staff member going about his business. But Roman caught the flicker, the briefest moment when the man's eyes slid toward the room, assessed, and moved on. It was the look of a hunter checking on prey. "Do you know that man, Harper?" Roman asked quietly. She was shaking again, pressed so tightly against him that he could feel every tremor. "He was there," she whispered. "He was there when they took Mommy." Roman's hand went to his phone. He typed a quick message to Nikolai, "Get security footage from this floor. Last 5 minutes. Now." Then he looked down at the terrified child in his arms and made another decision. The kind of decision that changed everything. "Harper," he said softly, "I'm going to take you somewhere safe, somewhere that man can't find you. Is that okay?" She looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she nodded. Roman's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a converted warehouse in Midtown, all exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows and sleek modern furniture. It was a space designed for a single, successful man who valued privacy and control. It was not designed for a 6-year-old girl. Harper sat on the massive leather couch, wrapped in one of Roman's sweaters that hung on her like a dress. She had a mug of hot chocolate in her hands, and she was looking around the penthouse with the wary curiosity of a wild animal encountering civilization for the first time. Roman was on the phone in the kitchen, his voice low and tense. "Yes, I understand protocol. No. I'm not interfering with the investigation. The child was in danger at the hospital. I removed her from that danger. Yes, my lawyers are aware." A pause. "Contact Dr. Reeves at NYU Langone for a medical report. The girl was hypothermic and malnourished. Someone failed her before I found her, Detective. I don't intend to let that happen again." He ended the call and took a breath. The detectives were unhappy, but they couldn't force him to return Harper to a hospital where someone she identified as a threat had access to her. Not without proof that Roman himself was a danger. Which he wasn't. Complicated history aside, he had never hurt a child and never would. That was a line even his father had never crossed. His phone buzzed with a text from Nikolai. "Package arriving in 5 minutes." The package was Jenna Carver. Roman had made some calls after leaving the hospital, reaching out to contacts who worked in community services, people who knew how to help children in crisis. One name had come up repeatedly: a young woman who worked at a community center in Brooklyn, known for her ability to connect with traumatized kids. The elevator chimed, and Roman went to meet her. Jenna Carver was not what he'd expected. She was 24, with warm brown skin, natural hair pulled back in a practical bun, and sharp dark eyes that assessed him critically as she stepped off the elevator. She was dressed simply in jeans and a rain-spotted jacket, and she carried herself like someone who had learned to stand her ground in tough situations. "Mr. Hale." It wasn't a question. Her accent was pure Brooklyn, no nonsense and direct. "Ms. Carver, thank you for coming on short notice. Your guy said it was an emergency." She looked past him toward the living room. "Where's the kid?" "On the couch. She's been through significant trauma. The doctors said physically she'll be fine, but emotionally." "She's terrified. Yeah, I got that from your message." Jenna moved past him without waiting for permission. "What's her name?" "Harper. I don't have a last name yet." Jenna approached the couch slowly, making herself visible but not threatening. She stopped a few feet away and crouched down to Harper's eye level. "Hey there," she said softly. "I'm Jenna. Mr. Roman asked me to come hang out with you. Is that okay?" Harper studied her for a long moment. Something in her expression shifted, not trust exactly, but a lessening of fear. She nodded. "Cool. That's some pretty fancy hot chocolate you've got there. Mind if I sit with you?" Another nod. Jenna settled onto the couch, leaving a careful distance between herself and the girl. Roman watched from the kitchen, impressed despite himself. There was an easy quality to the way Jenna moved, a naturalness that put even a traumatized child at ease. For the next hour, Jenna simply sat with Harper. She didn't push for information, didn't ask probing questions. She just was there, present and calm and safe. Eventually, Harper began to talk. "They came to our apartment," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the mug in her hands. "3 men. One of them was the man from the hospital." Jenna's expression didn't change, but Roman saw her hands tighten slightly in her lap. "The man you saw today?" "Yes, he was wearing a police uniform, but Mommy said he wasn't really a policeman. She said we had to run." Harper's voice wobbled. "But they were too fast." "What happened then, honey?" "They grabbed Mommy. She told me to hide. So I hid in the closet, and then when they left, I ran. I ran, and I got lost, and it was raining, and..." She trailed off, tears sliding down her cheeks. Roman stepped forward, unable to stay back any longer. "Harper, what happened to your mother? Do you know where they took her?" The girl shook her head. "I don't know, but they're bad men, and..." She looked up at Roman with those two old eyes. "The man in the alley works for the one who took her." "How do you know that?" "Because I heard them talking, before, when they didn't know I was listening." Harper set down her mug, her small hands trembling. "They took my mom, and the man in the alley works for the one who did." Jenna and Roman exchanged a look over the girl's head. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was something organized, coordinated. "I believe you," Jenna said firmly, putting a gentle hand on Harper's shoulder. Roman hesitated. His instincts were screaming warnings. This was moving too fast, too coordinated. A child appearing out of nowhere, immediately attaching herself to him with a story about organized criminals and fake cops. It felt like a setup. But looking at Harper, really looking at her, at the genuine terror in her eyes, at the way she trembled at the memory of what she'd witnessed, he couldn't believe she was part of any manipulation. Whatever was happening, she was a victim of it. Before he could respond, the security panel on the wall lit up with a soft alarm. "What is that?" Jenna asked. Roman was already moving toward the panel, his expression going cold. Someone just tried to hack into the building's guest registry. They were searching for new arrivals in the last 6 hours. "They're looking for her," Jenna said, instinctively moving closer to Harper. Roman's jaw tightened. They're looking for her, and they know she's somewhere in this building. Harper made a small sound of fear and pressed herself against Jenna's side. The older woman wrapped an arm around her protectively, her own eyes now showing the first flickers of fear. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly, "what exactly have we gotten into?" Roman didn't answer. He was already making calls, putting security protocols in place, mobilizing resources. Whatever this was, it had just become personal. The safe house in Red Hook wasn't actually a house. It was a converted shipping container on the waterfront, retrofitted with comfortable furniture, climate control, and security systems that would make most government installations jealous. Roman's father had established it decades ago, and Roman had maintained it for situations exactly like this one. The rain had finally stopped by the time they arrived, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming under the emerging stars. The waterfront was quiet, the usual bustle of commerce silent at this late hour. Harper was asleep in the container's small bedroom, exhausted by the day's events. Jenna sat at the narrow table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, watching Roman pace. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," she said. "I'm thinking." "Think sitting down. You're making me nervous." Roman stopped packing and looked at her properly for the first time since they'd arrived. She met his gaze without flinching, and he felt a flicker of respect. Most people found his intensity unsettling. Jenna Carver seemed merely annoyed by it. "Tell me about the community center," he said. Settling into the chair across from her, "How did you end up working there?" "That's what you want to talk about right now." "I want to know who I'm trusting with this situation. Humor me." Jenna sighed, but she answered. "I grew up in Bed-Stuy, rough neighborhood, rougher childhood. My mom worked 3 jobs, my dad was out of the picture, and I spent a lot of time at the local community center because it was safer than the streets. When I got old enough, I started volunteering there. Then I got a degree in social work, and now I run programs for at-risk kids." She shrugged. "Not a glamorous story, but it's mine." "And you're good with children, traumatized children specifically." "Kids trust me because I don't lie to them. I don't pretend the world is safe when it isn't. I don't promise things I can't deliver." She looked at him steadily. "What about you, Mr. Hale? What's your story? Because I've heard the rumors and I need to know what I'm dealing with." "What rumors would those be?" "That your logistics company is a front for organized crime, that you inherited a criminal empire from your father, that people who cross you tend to disappear." Jenna's voice was calm, but her eyes were watchful. "Are any of those true?" Roman was silent for a long moment, considering his answer. Finally, he said, "My father was a complicated man. He built his business in a complicated time, using complicated methods. When he died, I inherited all of it, the legitimate company, the questionable connections, the debts and obligations that came with both." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you. Yes, I know dangerous people. Yes, I've done things that wouldn't look good in a courtroom. But I've spent the last 3 years trying to pull my family's business into the light, to cut ties with the worst elements of my father's legacy." He met her eyes. "I'm not a good man, Ms. Carver, but I'm not a monster either. And right now, I'm the only thing standing between that little girl and whoever is hunting her." Jenna studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I believe you, mostly because I don't have another choice." The bedroom door creaked open, and Harper appeared, rubbing her eyes. "I can't sleep," she said quietly. "I keep seeing their faces." Jenna immediately went to her, kneeling down to her level. "That's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes our brains don't want to let go of scary things. How about you come sit with us for a while?" Harper nodded and let Jenna lead her to the table. She climbed into the chair between them, looking smaller than ever in the dim light. "Harper," Roman said gently, "I know this is hard, but I need to ask you some more questions. Is that okay?" The girl nodded. "You said you heard the men talking before they took your mom. Can you remember anything they said? Any names, any places?" Harper frowned, concentrating. "They talked about boxes, moving boxes, and a man named Victor who was angry about something." Roman's blood went cold. Victor, it couldn't be. "Did they say Victor's last name?" "No, but they said he worked in the big building, the one with all the trucks." The big building with all the trucks. Roman's main distribution center in Long Island City. "Harper," he said, keeping his voice carefully neutral, "did you ever see this Victor? Do you know what he looks like?" She shook her head, then paused. "But I can draw the man who took Mommy. I'm good at drawing." Jenna found a pen and some paper, and Harper bent over the table, her small hand moving with surprising precision. For several minutes, she worked in silence, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration. When she finished, she pushed the paper across the table toward Roman. He looked at it and felt the world shift beneath his feet. The drawing was crude, a child's sketch, but the features were unmistakable. The broad forehead, the thin lips, the distinctive way the hair swept back from the temples. Victor Reese, Senior Operations Manager at Hale Logistics, a man Roman had personally promoted just 6 months ago. A man he had trusted. "You know him," Jenna said, reading his expression. "Don't you?" Roman couldn't speak for a moment. His mind was racing, reassessing everything he thought he knew about his own company. "He works for me," he finally said. "Has worked for me for almost 3 years. Victor Reese. I promoted him myself." Harper's eyes went wide with fear. He's your friend." "No," Roman's voice was hard. "He's an employee, and apparently he's been using my company for something I knew nothing about." Harper wasn't running from random criminals. She wasn't the victim of some unrelated crime that had intersected with Roman's life by chance. She was running from someone inside his own organization. Roman's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and felt his jaw clench. A text from an unknown number. Return the girl. She wasn't meant to escape. He showed the message to Jenna, whose face went pale. "They know you have her," she whispered. "They know." Roman's voice was grim. "Which means we're running out of time." The abandoned textile factory near Long Island City had been closed for 15 years, a casualty of changing economics and outsourced manufacturing. Now it squatted in the industrial district like a rotting tooth, its windows dark and broken, its walls covered in graffiti. Roman's intelligence network had traced Victor Reese's movements over the past few weeks, looking for anomalies in his schedule. The factory had appeared repeatedly, visits that had no explanation in official company records. They approached at dawn, when the light was gray and uncertain. Roman had left Harper at the safe house with Nikolai, who was under strict orders to evacuate at the first sign of trouble. Jenna had insisted on coming, arguing that if they found Harper's mother, she would need a familiar face to help with the trauma. Roman hadn't argued. He was beginning to realize that arguing with Jenna Carver was rarely productive. The factory's main entrance was chained shut, but a side door had been forced open recently. They slipped inside, moving quietly through corridors thick with dust and the smell of decay. The main floor was cavernous and empty, old machinery left to rust in the shadows. But in the northeast corner, they found signs of recent activity, fresh footprints in the dust, a folding table with empty food containers, and a small cot with tangled sheets. Someone had been held here, recently. Jenna found it first, a child's bracelet lying broken on the floor. It was purple plastic, with small flower charms dangling from the links. Harper had one just like this, she said quietly. She was playing with it at the penthouse. Roman crouched beside her, examining the bracelet. It was broken clean through, as if it had been torn off. This is hers. She must have dropped it during the abduction. And they didn't notice. Which means her mother was here. Jenna looked around the empty space, her expression tight with frustration. But she's not here now. Roman moved through the room methodically, looking for any clue about where the captives might have been moved. In a trash can near the cot, he found a receipt from a bodega in Harlem, dated 2 days ago. In a corner, a burner phone with a dead battery. They were here as recently as a few hours ago, he said. Something made them move quickly. Us, Jenna said grimly. They knew we were getting close. Roman's phone buzzed, a text from Nikolai, all clear at the safe house. Harper is asking for you. They returned to find Harper sitting at the table, her small face pinched with worry. When Roman walked in, she immediately ran to him, throwing her arms around his legs. Did you find her? She asked, her voice small and hopeful. Did you find Mommy? Roman knelt down to her level. Not yet, but we found proof that she was in the place we looked. We're getting closer. Harper's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I drew another picture, she said, of the building where the men talked about Victor. Maybe it will help. Roman took the paper and unfolded it. The drawing showed a warehouse, crudely rendered but with specific details, a distinctive roofline, a logo on the side that Harper had carefully copied. It was his distribution center. Specifically, the old section that was supposed to be unused. Harper, he said slowly, did you ever go to this building, before the men took your mom? She nodded. Mommy took me there once. She was looking for something. Files, I think. She said it was important. Files? Harper's mother had been investigating something at his distribution center. Something connected to Victor Reese. Roman stood and moved away, his mind racing. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Marcus, I need you to pull all the access logs for the old section of the Long Island City warehouse. Last 6 months. And I need background on anyone who's been there after hours. Jenna was watching him, her expression thoughtful. You think Harper's mom found something she wasn't supposed to? I think she got too close to whatever Victor is running out of my facility. And when she did, he had to silence her. Harper came to stand beside Jenna, leaning against her side. Jenna put an arm around her automatically, a protective gesture that seemed entirely natural. Roman looked at them, the tough community worker and the terrified child, and felt something shift in his chest. These 2 strangers had entered his life less than 24 hours ago, but already they had become important to him in a way he didn't fully understand. Harper suddenly stiffened, pointing at the floor near the door. Look, she whispered. Footprints. Roman followed her gaze. There, barely visible in the dust near the threshold, were footprints. Fresh ones, leading in from outside. Someone had followed them here. Nikolai, Roman said quietly, his hand moving toward the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Secure the perimeter. Now. The guard moved immediately toward the door, but Harper grabbed Roman's arm. That man, she whispered, her voice trembling. He followed us here, I can feel it. Roman spent the next 2 days conducting a quiet, legal investigation into Victor Reese. He used private investigators, forensic accountants, and trusted contacts within law enforcement, all above board, all documented. What he found was damning. Victor had been running a shadow operation out of the old warehouse section for at least a year. He'd been using Hale logistics resources, trucks, warehouses, even personnel, to transport goods that never appeared in any official inventory. The operation was sophisticated, hidden behind layers of shell companies and falsified records. Human trafficking, that's what the evidence suggested. Victor Reese had been using Roman's company as cover for a human trafficking operation. Roman sat in his office, staring at the reports spread across his desk, and felt a cold rage building in his chest. He had trusted Victor. He had promoted Victor, and all the while the man had been using that trust to commit atrocities. His phone rang. Jenna. "I found something," she said without preamble. "One of my contacts at the community center, she works with a network that helps trafficking victims. She recognized Harper's description of her mother." "Who is she?" "Elena Kozlov, single mother, originally from Ukraine, worked as a cleaning woman at various corporate offices. About 3 weeks ago, she came to the network, claiming she'd found evidence of criminal activity at one of her jobs. She wanted to go to the police, but she was afraid. She said the people involved were connected, powerful. Let me guess, one of the offices she cleaned was my distribution center." "Yes, the network tried to help her, but before they could arrange protection, she disappeared, along with her daughter." Roman closed his eyes. Elena Kozlov had stumbled onto Victor's operation. She tried to do the right thing, tried to report it, and Victor had silenced her. "There's more," Jenna continued. "The network has been tracking Victor's operation for months. They have evidence, financial records, witness statements, even some video footage. They were building a case to bring to federal authorities." "Send me everything." "I'm sending it now. But Roman," Jenna paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was heavy. "Elena Kozlov's last report to the network mentioned that she'd identified an inside man, someone working with Victor who was feeding him information about the investigation." "Do we know who?" "No, but Elena was scared. She said the inside man was close to someone with power, someone who could protect Victor even if the operation was exposed." Roman's jaw tightened. Someone close to him, someone he trusted. His phone buzzed with a video message from an unknown number. He opened it and felt his blood turn to ice. Elena Kozlov sat in a chair in a dark room. Her face was bruised, her eyes swollen, but she was alive. Behind her stood a figure in shadow, unrecognizable. "Mr. Hale," Elena said, her voice raw and broken. "I know you have my daughter. Please, please keep her safe." The figure behind her leaned close and whispered something. Elena's face contorted with fear. "He wants me to give you a message," she continued. "He says, don't trust that man beside you. He says you already let the traitor in." The video ended. Roman stared at his phone, his mind racing. Don't trust that man beside you. Elena was warning him about someone who was close to him right now. He looked up from the phone, scanning the room. His office was empty except for Marcus, his assistant, his trusted right hand. Marcus, who had access to all of Roman's schedules. Marcus, who knew about the investigation into Victor. Marcus, who had been standing right there when Roman sent the first team to the factory. Marcus, who was looking at Roman with an expression that suddenly seemed less loyal and more calculating. "Is everything all right, Mr. Hale?" Marcus asked. Roman's hand moved slowly toward his phone, keeping his expression neutral. "Fine, I just need to make some calls." He pressed the silent alarm beneath his desk and prayed that Nikolai would respond in time. The day had been gray and wet, rain threatening, but never quite arriving. Roman's security team had detained Marcus for questioning, and the man had immediately lawyered up, a response that only confirmed Roman's suspicions. But Marcus was small fish. The real threat was still out there. Roman had arranged to move Harper and Jenna to a new location, somewhere even more secure than the Red Hook safe house. They met in the parking garage beneath his midtown building, where his armored car waited. "This is excessive," Jenna said, eyeing the vehicle. "Are you expecting a war?" "I'm expecting anything." Roman opened the back door for them. "Get in, we need to move." Harper climbed in first, followed by Jenna. Roman's driver, a man named Conrad who had been with the company for a decade, started the engine. "JFK first," Roman said, sliding into the front passenger seat. "Then the backup location in Connecticut." Conrad nodded and pulled out of the garage. They were 3 blocks from the building when the doors locked with a heavy click. "What was that?" Jenna asked. Roman tried his door. Sealed. He looked at Conrad and saw the man's expression shift from neutral professionalism to something cold and hard. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hale," Conrad said. "New orders." He pressed a button on the dashboard, and a privacy screen rose between the front and back seats. Roman reached for his weapon, but Conrad was faster. A small canister appeared in his hand, and before Roman could react, a cloud of gas filled the front compartment. The last thing Roman heard, before darkness took him, was Jenna screaming his name. He woke to pain and the smell of gasoline. His hands were bound behind him, his head throbbing from whatever had been in that gas. He was in the back of a different vehicle, a van, judging by the interior, and through his blurred vision, he could see figures moving around him. "Mr. Hale is awake," someone said. The van door slid open, and Roman was dragged into the gray light of a parking structure. Not the one beneath his building, somewhere else. Industrial, abandoned. Conrad stood a few feet away, his expression blank. Beside him were two other men Roman didn't recognize. And between them, Victor Reese. "Hello, Roman," Victor said, his voice smooth and pleasant. "I've been meaning to have this conversation for a while." Roman struggled against his bonds, his mind racing. "Where are they? The woman and the child?" Victor smiled. "Safe for now, though that depends entirely on how cooperative you decide to be." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Freedom to continue my work without interference. That little girl saw too much, talked too much. I need her returned to me, along with whatever evidence you've managed to gather about my operations." "Go to hell." Victor's smile didn't waver. "I expected that response. Fortunately, I have leverage." He gestured, and one of the men opened a side door. Beyond it, Roman could see a smaller room, and in that room, Jenna, her hands bound, her face pale, but her eyes blazing with fury. And Harper, pressed against Jenna's side, trembling but not crying. Her small face was set in an expression of desperate bravery. "Let them go," Roman said. "They have nothing to do with this." "On the contrary, they have everything to do with this." Victor stepped closer. "The girl is a witness, the woman is leverage, and you, Roman, are the obstacle I need to remove." One of the men moved toward Jenna and Harper, reaching for the child. What happened next was chaos. Jenna exploded into motion, throwing herself between the man and Harper. Despite her bound hands, she managed to drive her shoulder into his chest, sending him staggering backward. Harper screamed and ducked under a table. Roman used the distraction to lunge at Conrad, driving his shoulder into the man's midsection. They went down together, Roman's bound hands making it impossible to fight properly, but his momentum enough to knock the breath out of his former driver. The struggle was brief and brutal. Victor's men were trained, but they hadn't expected resistance. And when the door burst open and Nikolai led a team of police officers into the structure, they weren't prepared for that either. In the end, 3 men were in handcuffs. Conrad was nursing a broken nose, and Victor Reese was pinned to the ground with 2 officers holding him down. "How?" Victor spat, glaring at Roman. "How did you know?" Roman stood slowly, flexing his wrists where the bonds had cut into his skin. "I didn't, but when my assistant turned out to be a traitor, I started questioning everyone else. Conrad's phone showed he'd been in contact with an unknown number for months. The police were already tracking this location when he brought us here." Victor's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over. I have friends, powerful friends." "Not anymore." Roman's voice was cold. "The FBI is raiding your operation as we speak. Every document, every financial record, every piece of evidence is being collected. Your friends are going to spend the rest of their lives trying to distance themselves from you." As Victor was dragged away, Conrad was brought to stand before Roman. The driver's face was pale, his broken nose still bleeding. "You'll never find her mother in time," Conrad said, his voice thick with blood. "She's already being moved. You'll never." "Shut up." Roman's voice was quiet but carried clearly. "You're going to tell the officers everything you know, every location, every contact, every detail of Victor's operation. And you're going to do it because the alternative is spending the rest of your life in a federal prison with the people you helped traffic. Conrad's face went even paler. Harper emerged from under the table, her small face streaked with tears. She ran straight to Jenna, who gathered her into her arms despite her own obvious shock. "It's over," Jenna whispered, stroking the girl's hair. "It's over, sweetheart." But Roman's eyes were already fixed on the door. Conrad had said Harper's mother was being moved. Time was running out. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need everything you have on Victor's secondary locations. Now." The brownstone on 127th Street had been abandoned for 2 years, a casualty of rising property taxes and declining fortunes. Its windows were boarded, its facade crumbling, its interior gutted and forgotten. But in the basement, behind a concealed door, someone was very much alive. Roman's team had traced Alina Kozlov to this location through a combination of Conrad's confession and digital forensics. Victor had been planning to move her within the hour, to where, Conrad didn't know, but somewhere she would never be found. They arrived with 10 minutes to spare. The NYPD's Special Victims Unit led the operation, with Roman's private security providing backup. Jenna stayed in the car with Harper, both of them watching through the tinted windows as officers moved into position around the building. "What if she's not there?" Harper whispered. "What if they already took her?" Jenna squeezed her hand. "Roman won't let that happen. He's going to find her." The entry was swift and professional. Officers breached the front door, clearing rooms as they moved through the gutted interior. The concealed door in the basement was locked from the outside, and when they finally got it open, Alina Kozlov was there. She was thin, pale, her dark hair hanging lank around her gaunt face. Her wrists and ankles showed signs of restraint, and her eyes were hollow with exhaustion and fear. But she was alive. "Harper," she whispered when she saw Roman. "My daughter, is she?" "She's safe," Roman said. "She's outside. She's been asking for you." Alina's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought I would never." Roman helped her to her feet, supporting her when her legs threatened to give way. "It's over now. You're safe." They emerged from the brownstone into the gray afternoon light. An ambulance was waiting, paramedics ready with blankets and medical equipment. And standing beside the car, held back by Jenna but straining toward the building. "Harper." When she saw her mother, the little girl let out a cry that was half scream, half sob. She broke free of Jenna's grip and ran, her small legs pumping, her arms outstretched. Alina fell to her knees and caught her daughter, holding her so tightly that Roman could see the desperation in every line of her body. "Mommy, mommy, mommy," Harper was crying, the words running together. "I thought they hurt you. I was so scared." "I'm here, baby. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Jenna approached slowly, her own eyes bright with tears. She stood beside Roman, watching the reunion, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You did it," she finally said. "We did it." Roman's voice was quiet. "I couldn't have found her without you, without Harper trusting you enough to talk." Jenna shook her head. "I just listened. You did the rest." Roman watched Harper and Alina, still holding each other as if they might never let go. Something in his chest that had been tight for days finally loosened. "Thank you," he said. Jenna looked at him, surprised. "For what?" "For believing her. When she told you about Victor, about the fake cops, you believed her instantly. That mattered. Kids don't usually make that stuff up. When a child tells you she's in danger, you listen." Jenna paused, then added, "Even when the adults around her don't." As if on cue, there was a commotion near the brownstone entrance. Victor Reese was being led out in handcuffs, surrounded by officers. He caught sight of Roman and stopped, his face twisting with hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. "I'll fight this, I'll—" "Take him away," the lead detective said, and Victor was dragged toward a waiting patrol car. Roman watched him go with cold satisfaction. Then he turned back to Harper and Alina, still wrapped in each other's arms. "Let's get them to the hospital," he said. "They need medical attention." What happens after that? Jenna asked. I don't know. For the first time since this began, Roman allowed himself to feel something other than determination. He felt tired. He felt relieved. And he felt something else, something that might have been hope. But whatever happens, they're not alone anymore. 1 week later, the sun was shining. It had rained for 3 days straight after Victor's arrest, as if the city itself was washing away the darkness of what had happened. But on the 7th day, the clouds parted, and Central Park exploded with life, joggers and dog walkers and families with children, all drawn outside by the perfect spring weather. Roman sat on a bench near the conservatory water, watching Harper play on the grass nearby. Elena was beside him, still thin and pale from her ordeal, but with color returning to her cheeks and light returning to her eyes. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly. What you did, what you risked. You don't need to thank me. Roman's eyes stayed on Harper, who was chasing a butterfly with delighted focus. You tried to do the right thing. You tried to expose what Victor was doing. That took courage. It took stupidity. I should have known I couldn't fight them alone. You weren't alone. You had Harper, and she found exactly the right person to help her. Elena smiled, the expression still tentative but genuine. She told me, everything that happened. How she ran through the rain, how she found you in the alley. She said you looked like someone who would help, even though you looked scary. Roman laughed, a rare sound. Scary. Her word, not mine. But she also said you were kind, that you didn't treat her like a problem to be solved. Harper came running back toward them, her cheeks flushed with exertion. Mommy, did you see? I almost caught a butterfly. I saw, baby. You were so fast. The little girl flopped onto the bench beside Roman, leaning against his arm with easy familiarity. Is Jenna coming? She's on her way. Roman checked his phone. She had some things to finish at the community center. As if summoned by the mention of her name, Jenna appeared on the path, walking toward them with her characteristic purposeful stride. She was wearing a bright yellow sundress instead of her usual practical clothes, and Roman found himself staring. You're late, he said when she reached them. You're welcome, she held up a bag. I brought lunch. Someone told me there would be a picnic. That someone was Harper, Elena said, smiling. She's been planning this all week. They spread a blanket on the grass and ate sandwiches, while Harper chattered about everything and nothing. The butterflies, the dogs she'd seen, the funny shape of a cloud. She had bounced back from her trauma with the resilience that only children seem to possess, though Elena had mentioned she still sometimes woke crying in the night. But she was healing. They both were. After lunch, Harper demanded that Roman push her on the swings. He obliged, though he'd never pushed anyone on a swing in his life and had to be coached by Jenna on proper technique. Higher, Harper shrieked. Higher, Roman. Much higher, and you'll end up in the reservoir. I want to fly. You're not supposed to actually fly. It's just an expression. Jenna laughed, watching from the edge of the playground. You're terrible at this. I'm aware. Maybe stick to your day job. Roman caught the swing gently, bringing Harper to a stop. She immediately scrambled off and ran to Jenna, grabbing her hand. Jenna, will you come play with us? What kind of playing? Just playing, you and Roman and Mommy and me, like a family. There was a moment of silence. Elena looked down at her hands. Jenna's expression softened, and Roman felt that unfamiliar warmth in his chest again. Sure, Jenna said finally, like a family. They played until the sun started to set, turning the park golden and painting long shadows across the grass. Harper grew tired and ended up in Roman's arms, her head resting on his shoulder, her breathing growing slow and even. She's out, Elena said softly. Roman nodded, careful not to wake the sleeping child. She had a big day. She's had a big week. Jenna helped Elena gather their things while Roman held Harper. As they started walking toward the park exit, Jenna fell into step beside him. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not giving up on them, for not treating this like just another problem for someone else to solve. She paused. I've worked with a lot of people in crisis. Most of them get abandoned by the system, by the people who are supposed to help. You actually followed through. Roman looked down at the sleeping child in his arms, then at Alina walking ahead of them, then at Jenna beside him. I had help, he said. Good help. Jenna smiled. Yeah, well, that's what we do. They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Harper stirred briefly, mumbled something incomprehensible, and settled deeper into Roman's arms. What happens now? Jenna asked. For them, I mean. Alina's being relocated. New identity, new city, until we're sure all of Victor's connections have been rounded up. I have people who can help with that. And Harper. She goes with her mother, obviously. Obviously, Jenna's voice was carefully neutral. They'll be okay, you know. Alina is stronger than she looks, and Harper is, well, Harper is extraordinary. Yes, Roman's voice was quiet. She is. They reached the park entrance, where Nikolai was waiting with the car. Alina took Harper from Roman's arms carefully, not wanting to wake her. This is goodbye then, Alina said. At least for now. For now, Roman nodded. If you need anything at all, contact Nikolai. He'll know how to reach me. Alina smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. You're a good man, Roman Hale, whatever anyone else says about you. She climbed into the car with Harper, and Nikolai closed the door behind them. Through the tinted window, Roman could see Harper's face, peaceful in sleep. Then the car pulled away, and they were gone. Roman stood on the sidewalk, watching until the vehicle disappeared into traffic. Jenna stayed beside him, not speaking, just present. You going to be okay? She finally asked. Roman took a breath, letting the question settle. I don't know, this whole thing, it's changed things, changed the way I see my company, my people. I've been so focused on pulling the business into the light that I didn't notice the darkness growing right in front of me. You can't catch everything. I should have caught this. Jenna touched his arm lightly, a brief contact, but warm. You caught it when it mattered. That little girl is alive because of you. Her mother is alive because of you. Victor Reese is going to prison because of you. Because of us, Roman corrected. Fine, because of us. Jenna smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. So what now? Roman looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something shift in his chest. Not attraction exactly, not romance, but the beginning of something, a possibility. I was thinking, he said slowly, that your community center could use some additional funding. Programs for at-risk kids, that sort of thing. Jenna's eyebrows rose. Are you offering me a bribe? I'm offering you a partnership. Legitimate business supporting legitimate community work. No strings attached. She studied him for a long moment, that sharp intelligence assessing and evaluating. Then she laughed. You know what? I believe you. Is that a yes? It's a we'll see. She started walking toward the subway entrance. But you can buy me dinner while we discuss the details. Roman fell into step beside her. Dinner sounds reasonable. Somewhere nice. I don't do fast food. I wouldn't dream of it. They walked together into the evening, two people who had been thrown together by circumstance and found something unexpected. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, but connection, understanding, the beginning of trust. Behind them, the sun finished setting, painting the city in shades of gold and rose. And somewhere in the darkness, in a car heading toward a new life, a little girl slept peacefully, dreaming of butterflies and sunshine and the man who had saved her. 6 months later, the community center in Brooklyn had been transformed. Where there had been peeling paint and broken windows, there was now fresh color and new glass. Where there had been insufficient funding and overworked staff, there was now proper support and reasonable workloads. The children's programming had tripled, the after-school tutoring had expanded, and there was even a new playground in the back. Jenna stood in the doorway of the main room, watching a group of kids build towers out of blocks. Among them was a familiar face, a little girl with dark hair and freckles, her laughter ringing out as her tower toppled. She looks happy, Roman said, appearing beside her. She is happy, they both are. Jenna nodded toward the corner, where Alina was helping another child with homework. Alina started volunteering last month, says she wants to give back. That's good. It is. Jenna turned to look at him. You visiting for any particular reason or just checking on your investment? Can it be both? It can. Doesn't mean I'm going to make it easy for you. Roman smiled, something that came more naturally these days. I would expect nothing less. Harper spotted them and came running over, her arms outstretched. She crashed into Roman's legs with the force of a small hurricane, wrapping her arms around him. Roman, you came back. I told you I would. I know, but grown-ups say stuff they don't mean sometimes. She looked up at him with those wide, trusting eyes. But you always mean it. Roman knelt down to her level, something he'd become much more comfortable with over the past months. How are you doing, Harper? Everything okay? Everything's great. Mommy's helping with homework, and I made 3 new friends, and Jenna taught me how to do a cartwheel. I'm still not very good at it, but I'm practicing, and also I drew you a picture. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket and pressed it into his hands. Roman opened it carefully. The drawing showed 4 figures standing together under a yellow sun. One was small with dark hair, clearly Harper. Beside her was a taller figure with similar features, Alina. And next to them, holding hands with the others, were 2 more figures, a man in a suit and a woman with a bright smile. That's you and Jenna, Harper explained, pointing at the figures. Because you're our family now, right? Roman looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then he looked at Jenna, who was watching with an expression he couldn't quite read. Then at Harper, still waiting for an answer. Right, he said finally. Family. Harper beamed and threw her arms around his neck. Over her shoulder, Roman met Jenna's eyes. She smiled, that real, genuine smile he'd come to treasure, and nodded slightly. It wasn't the family Roman had expected. It wasn't the life he'd planned. But standing here, in this colorful room full of children's laughter, with a little girl who trusted him and a woman who challenged him and a future that suddenly seemed bright with possibility. It was exactly what he needed. Victor Reese was convicted on 47 federal charges and sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. His network was dismantled piece by piece, and 23 other conspirators were arrested in a sprawling investigation that made national headlines. Conrad, the driver, cooperated fully with authorities and received a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. He would serve 15 years. Marcus, the assistant, was convicted of corporate espionage and obstruction of justice. He received 12 years. Hale Logistics underwent a complete restructuring, with new oversight protocols and a full internal investigation that rooted out the last traces of Victor's operation. The company emerged stronger and cleaner, its reputation actually improved by Roman's swift and decisive handling of the crisis. Alina and Harper remained in New York, protected but no longer hiding. Alina found work at a nonprofit that helped trafficking survivors, using her own experience to comfort and guide others. Harper thrived at her new school and remained a regular presence at the community center. And Roman Hale, the man everyone thought they knew, the heir to a complicated legacy, the rumored kingpin who turned out to be something far more interesting, found himself becoming part of something he'd never expected. A family. It had started with a little girl's warning in a rain-soaked alley. It had continued through danger and betrayal and a desperate search. And it had ended, no, not ended, but continued, in sunlight and laughter and the simple, profound gift of trust. Don't trust that man, Harper had said on that dark night. She had been right about Victor, but she had also been right about something else. Some men were exactly who they appeared to be. And some men were so much more. Thank you for watching to the end. Please remember to click the subscribe button and make sure you like this video, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Thank you.